Welcome back, everybody, to Just Talk Hoops podcast. It has been a minute, hasn't it? Apologize for that. We have not gotten an episode out in a while. So today's episode is pretty much just going to be talking about everything that's happened recently in the NBA, all the new developments, and what I think about some of these things that have been going on in the league in the past few weeks, because obviously I've missed a few. We'll do our games of the week at the end, of course. Once again, if you're on Spotify, 5-star rating, YouTube, like and subscribe. Drop some comments. Let me know your thoughts on anything basketball. I'm always willing to talk basketball with you guys. So we're going to get right into it here. So, first of all, let's talk about some of the injuries that have been happening in the NBA, or that have kind of been resolved in the NBA recently, because we've got Jason Tatum coming back. He just made his debut the other night. Trae Young debuted for the the Wizards, the first team he's been on since the Atlanta Hawks, and Giannis came back the other night. So that was cool to see. Obviously, we want to see the stars of the league playing. I mean, you want the best possible players playing. That's exactly what we want as basketball fans. So it's cool to see some of those guys come back. I am still a believer that the NBA should shorten the regular season amount of games. I think keep it the same length in terms of time, right? Keep it the same, and then just get rid of back-to-backs entirely. Get rid of like 10 games. We still get a lot of good basketball, and we actually get players to play every night, right? Or maybe not every night, but it limits the chance of injuries, because I was just at the Nuggets game last night. They lost to the Knicks, and not only did they look tired because it was a back-to-back, they looked burnt out. They looked like they did not have nearly as much effort as you'd like them to. But also, on top of that, Jamal Murray gets injured. He sprains his ankle because his body is broken down. He's been playing too much basketball. And I understand that we pay these guys to play, but their chance of playing the rest of the season goes up a lot when you're not forcing them to play back-to-back. So I'm all for getting rid of back-to-backs. And if that requires getting rid of some of the games of the season, I'm okay with that. As long as it's the same amount of time, I don't think there's any reason not to do that. Now, I understand the arguments about total stats and all that stuff, and you'd have to think about that. But if you're basing your all-time debates off of simply total stats, then you are not really having an all-time debate. You're just reading stats off a page, right? So if you're saying, well, LeBron has to be the greatest of all time because he has the most points, that doesn't make sense. Now, I think LeBron is the greatest of all time, but that's not because, this is the one reason. That's not the way to do that. So the total stats, it would make it so that some records would be practically impossible to break, but it also makes it so that, players are going to stay on the court. So if a guy who's normally playing 60 games, now, all of a sudden there's the new, all of a sudden you get rid of some of those games, and now they're playing 70 and playing most of the season because they haven't been injured on back-to-backs or haven't been sitting out back-to-backs. Like we've seen Joel Embiid sitting out back-to-backs for a lot of his career because he's so worried about getting injured, which is kind of an understandable concern. So I feel like if you get rid of those back-to-backs, all of a sudden you get rid of some of this turmoil and some of this players are always injured. I mean, look at the award races this year. Right, Wembenyama, Giannis, LeBron have already missed too much time to make All-NBA teams. I think Luka is on the brink of missing too much time. Jokic can only miss one more game. Shea can only miss a couple more games. So, Cade Cunningham might win MVP. Cade's been having an incredible season, but I don't think that he's been more of an MVP candidate than Jokic, Luka, or Shea this season. And so those guys should be the favorite. They should be the ones who it's they can win MVP. But because of all the injuries that players have been sustaining in this year's NBA, they can't win. So now Cade's gonna win it. He's not. He hasn't gotten it yet, right? We can't say he's going to, but it's looking more and more likely that he might. And once again, no disrespect to Cade, he's been having a great year. It's not his fault that other guys are missing time. But I just feel like if you shorten that season a little bit, and obviously you adjust the games played adjustment to fix that, ratio-wise, but it doesn't make sense to me to have so many games when players are already showing so much sign of fatigue and so much sign of injury. Like, there's a reason why so many superstars are missing time. And then you go to a game expecting, like, hoping to see Jason Tatum or Tyrese Halliburton or Shea or Jokic or Wemby or Giannis or LeBron, all these guys who've missed significant amounts of time. And obviously, like, Halliburton and Tatum's injuries came last season, but it's still like, the reason for that is probably the wear and tear that their body's been sustaining throughout the year. And I'm not saying that, like, these guys are just going to stop getting injured if you get rid of back-to-backs. I'm just saying that would help. So if that could help get rid of some of these injuries, which make the game less enjoyable to watch. I'm not saying get rid of a ton of games. I'm not saying make it a football season where you play 17 games. I'm saying make it like 72, 75, get enough to get rid of the need for back-to-backs and never have a team playing on back-to-back nights. I think scheduling-wise, the NBA should look into that because it will limit those injuries. But that's not what I'm here to talk about the whole night. So let me get away from that. I'm happy that Tatum, Trae, and Giannis are back. Now, I think it's interesting. Let's start with Trae. We'll talk about Trae for a little bit. I think it's interesting that they brought him in at all because I was under the impression that both him and AD were just going to sit out for the entirety of the 2026 season so that the Wizards could get a good pick. Obviously, this class is loaded. And you look at it, like you look at that team and you say, well, I don't think they're good enough to. Obviously, they're way too far behind to contend for a playoff spot now. So sit AD, sit Trae, and AD's still sitting because I believe he's still dealing with those injuries, which once again, but like Trae Young is a guy who I was expecting to sit the rest of the year, but instead he played the other night, which I thought was cool. Like I'm not a huge fan of teams sitting players if they're healthy because I get that you want a number one overall pick or even top 4, top 5. Like, this is a draft that has got great prospects for a lot. Like, there's a lot of great prospects in this draft, and we're going to talk about that a little bit as we get into March Madness time, stuff like that. But I do think that when you look at a team like the Wizards, they're looking to rebuild and then with Trae and AD make a push next season with their newly acquired rookie talent. So it's surprising to me to see Trae play. But like I said, I think that's cool because when you're sitting guys to get a great draft pick, you're hoping that draft pick ends up becoming a Trae Young or an Anthony Davis. So it's, it becomes something that I like to see them play. And I kind of wonder if Trae said, hey, let me play, right? Like, I wonder if he goes to the coach and the general manager, whoever he needs to go to, and says, like, I understand that you guys want to rebuild, but I want to play because I'm healthy. And they may have been like, whatever. Now, they still lost that game, so it's not like, oh, man, they're going to fall out of the lottery odds. No, they're most likely going to stay pretty much exactly where they're at. They're not going to – maybe they just thought, oh, we're not going to out-tank the Pacers or the Nets, which is probably true. Nets didn't get a win tonight. I'm recording this on Saturday. You guys will see it on Sunday. But the Nets did get a win, which, cool, but they're still going to be way down at the bottom, and the Pacers have been bad all season. So probably they just said, well, we're not going to out-tank them. Let's at least get Trae accustomed to these guys so we don't have as much of a learning curve when we get into next season. We're trying to contend. Now it's like Trae Young and Alex Sarr may have already perfected that pick and roll. Trae Young already knows where the shooters are going to be when he's getting to the rim, stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see what Trae looks like in this system and what he brings to a Wizards team that obviously has not been great, but does have some solid young talent. And I think the Wizards can honestly be really exciting next year just because obviously they've got 2 stars plus the young talent that should grow even more, and they'll probably have a good draft pick so they could get one of those guys who, once again, we'll talk about that a little more as we get to March Madness and then as we get also to, draft season. But, I mean, if they get into that top 4, top 5 range, that would be really, really interesting. Next, we'll talk about Giannis. I feel like him coming back is kind of inconsequential. The Bucks maybe are trying to make a play-in push, but I don't think anything changes for them this season. Now, they kept Giannis, which is a positive for them probably, just because, I think it is, unless they were going to get a crazy, bag. Like, you're not often going to get something that is better or equal to Giannis, even if you're getting a lot from teams that were likely willing to pay a lot. But Giannis, clearly, it's been a weird situation with him and whether he wants to leave the Bucks or not. I talked about that a little bit I was going to say last week, but it's been a little more than a week. But Giannis, I mean, he's been one of the best players in the world for years and years. Like, we know that Giannis Antetokounmpo is one of the best basketball players in the world. Does that change much for the Bucks? I don't think so. Obviously, they signed Cam Thomas, which I thought was, that was cool because I do like Cam Thomas, so it's cool to see him get a roster spot. But he's been up and down, right? He still doesn't provide much outside of his scoring ability, and he's been iffy on the scoring end. And the supporting cast for that team is just not good enough for me to really say, oh, this is a team that's going to make any noise, even if they make the play-in, which doesn't look very, very likely. I'm not sure exactly how many games back they are. There's a chance they jump in, but I don't think it's super likely. Even if they do, I'm not taking them over some of those teams in the play-in, and even if they were able to get out of the play-in, there's no way they beat the Knicks, Celtics, or the Pistons, who are the three teams kind of in the running for that first and second seed, which is who you'd have to play to get out of the first round if you're coming in via the play-in. So I don't think it changes a whole lot. It's cool to see him on the court. Like I said, I want to see stars playing. So it's cool to see him on the court, but it doesn't really change much. Jason Tatum came back, though. That's actually a big one because obviously he tears his Achilles last year. Most people think, okay, he's going to be out for the entirety of next season. And I thought going into the year that the Celtics were going to take a step back and we're going to kind of go into more of a rebuilding mode. I mean, you can look back at my preseason predictions. That's what I thought. It's not happening at all. They've been playing incredible basketball. Shout out to Jaylen Brown. He's been stepping up big time. And, Coach Mazzulla and the rest of that Celtics supporting cast, those guys have been playing really, really good basketball. But it's kind of insane that they've been doing this without who I think is their best player. I know that because of Jaylen Brown his recent surgence in scoring and in his production, some people are debating about which one of them is a better player. Now, I think fully healthy, right, let's assume that Tatum comes back at the level that he was playing at before the injury. And I think Tatum's better just because he's a more well-rounded player. He can score at the volume that Brown can, but he also brings so much playmaking, rebounding, defensive value that I would say he's probably the most well-rounded player in the league right now. I would say that Tatum's still easily the best Celtic. Now, maybe not easily, right? It's somewhat of a conversation because, like I said, Jaylen Brown's been playing incredible basketball, but I still think that Tatum, to me, is the better Celtic. Now, obviously, he came back the other night. He wasn't on a minutes restriction. He actually played a good, I don't know exactly how many, but he played a good number of minutes, and it was impressive to see. Like, after coming off an Achilles injury, that's no joke. And obviously, his efficiency struggled a little bit in terms of scoring the ball, which I'm not mad at. He's still, he's coming back from an Achilles injury, and I believe they won that game. They were playing the Mavs, and he put in good rebounding, assist number. Like, he was putting up other stats. He was playing pretty well. Now, it was kind of a struggle to see him try and get his first bucket because he missed a couple, and then he tried to yam one and just got rim stuffed. But he did end up having a solid, productive game. So it was, I didn't watch the entire game. I watched first quarter to half. But it does seem like, at least through the box score, he had a somewhat impactful game. And coming off an Achilles injury, that's all you can really ask. And if he's in his mode come playoff time, that team could be extremely scary because they've already been playing like one of the best teams in the East, and now you add in one of the best players in the world, and all of a sudden it's like this team is a contender, and not just a contender, but they might be favorites in the East. We're obviously going to have to see what Tatum plays like for the next couple weeks, next couple months as we get closer to playoff time, but still it's like, so you've got Peyton Pritchard, who's been playing really great basketball so far this year. Derek White, we know exactly the value that he brings. He's one of the best glue guys in the league. Jaylen Brown, who stepped up big time and might still be their number one option even after Tatum comes back, and they might run Tatum in the second option. Tatum, who, like we were saying earlier, is one of the most well-rounded players in the league and one of the best players in the league when he's fully healthy. And then Keita, who's stepped up incredibly well. And I was, before the season, I was saying, oh, they don't really have a starting center. Like, I don't really trust Keita to play those minutes, but I now do trust Keita to play those minutes. He's been playing really, really well. And I think that that's something that, that's something that's credit to him, credit to the coaching staff who are getting their best out of these guys. And then other guys stepping up, Jordan Walsh, Hugo Gonzalez, who's someone I'm a really big fan of. I think he's really cool, especially as a rookie, the way he's fitting into this, the way he's playing great defense. He's a versatile player. I kind of wish the Nets had taken him instead of Saraf or Wolf. But he's been playing incredible basketball over there in Boston. And it just shows that this team is going to get the best out of every guy that they give minutes. And that's one of the reasons that I think they could be a championship team we saw them in 2024. They won the championship, and obviously the roster has changed a good bit since then, but still that's a similar thing of like they're getting production out of every single guy on the roster, and that's exactly what we see out of championship teams. Like we see it with the Thunder, right? This year they've struggled with injuries at times. We see Shea go out, we see Chet go out, we see J-Dub miss an extended period of time, and A.J. Mitchell steps up big time. He plays really good basketball. Jared McCain, he comes to OKC after struggling in Philly for this season at least, and he plays some really good basketball. Jalen Williams has stepped up. He's the other Jalen with the J Will, not J Dub. But like those guys step up when it's needed. Cason Wallace and Isaiah Joe and all these role players, they do so much for that team because that's a contending level team. The Celtics have that same feel, and that's kind of one of the reasons that I'm going to have to think a little bit more about it. Like I said, I'm going to need to see how Tatum plays over the next month or so to see if they could be favorites in the East. But right now, Pistons, Knicks, Celtics, that's the top three, and the Celtics were already in that top three. Now they're adding Jason Tatum. That could be terrifying. I think that they're going to have a really, really good season. Or a really, really good end of the season. They've already had a really good season, but they're going to have a really, really good end of the season and finish it out really well. Talking about teams that are supposed to be contending, let's talk about the Denver Nuggets a little bit. So obviously, like I said, I went to the Nuggets game the other night against the New York Knicks. They got killed. I left that game early, and I almost never leave NBA games early. Or any sports game. That's kind of a rule for me. Not this time. I was like, you know what? I'm not Zeke Naji, and no disrespect to any of the guys I mentioned here, but like Zeke Naji and Pacom Dadier were checked in with like 9 minutes left in the fourth. That is not good at all for the Nuggets. Now I understand they're coming off the second night of a back-to-back. That does not make you shoot such an atrocious percentage from three or from the free throw line. And Jokic still had a really good night. He's scoring the ball really well. Now, he did have some turnovers like he has had for a number of games now, and he shot threes, and I don't love when Jokic shoots threes, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in detail. Nikola Jokic is easily the best post player in the game right now. There's no one I trust one-on-one offensively to get a bucket in the post than Nikola Jokic. And for some reason, they're having him run outside the arc and shoot threes. Now, I understand he can do that. People seem to tend to misinterpret what I'm trying to say about Nikola Jokic's three-point shooting. He can shoot threes. My thing is, I don't think he should shoot as many threes as he is. If he's open and he has a great look, yeah, or if he needs to because they're running out of time and it's the best look they can generate, yeah, shoot the three because he's capable of hitting those. But when we've got 12 seconds left on the shot clock, there's a defender who's maybe not quite they're not, it's not Steph. They're not like in his, in his pocket trying to stop him from shooting, but they're on him. Why is that the shot we're taking? To find a way, especially in clutch time. It feels like every single time their game plan in the clutch has been give Jokic the ball, have him shoot a late a three late in the shot clock or early, just shoot a three, even if it's contested. I don't think that makes sense. I think if the Nuggets are running a lineup that they run fairly often, Jamal Murray, Christian Brown, Cam Johnson, Aaron Gordon just came back, so like we'll give him a little bit. But like if they're running Tim Hardaway Jr. or if they're running Spencer Jones and Jokic, the only guy on that lineup who's worse at shooting threes is Spencer Jones. And if they have Tim Hardaway Jr., and then it's Jokic. And you can make a debate for Christian. But what I'm trying to say is, if we're trying to shoot a three, I don't think Jokic is the guy we go to. I think the way you should run your clutch plays if you're the Denver Nuggets is find Jokic in the post, have him do his work there. Now, I don't trust a single player in the NBA to guard Jokic one-on-one in the post. We've seen him give Rudy Gobert, Anthony Davis, these guys work in playoff series even, and those are some of the best defenders in the league. I don't trust Wemby. I don't trust anybody to consistently stop Jokic in the post. Now, they'll get some stops, but I don't trust them to consistently do it. So if he's working in the post and either he's going to be able to score or they're going to have to double, or even if he doesn't score, it's a good look, right, most of the time, or they're going to have to double. That way he can kick it out to the shooter, and then if you're surrounding him with shooters, you have a much better look at a three. Now, I understand a lot of those guys have missed threes too. Cam Johnson has shot very poorly recently. Jamal has been the only one that's consistently been really good from the three-point arc over the past couple of weeks. But I still think that's a better look than Jokic. I don't want Jokic shooting threes in clutch time, because when he's shooting 7 or 8 threes and he's hitting 2 of them, that's 5 or 6 possessions where it's practically a turnover because he's not in the paint to rebound it either. He's easily their best rebounder. So unless a guy like a Bruce Brown or a Spencer Jones or whatever is fighting for the rebound and winning that battle, which is not super likely just because they're not, like it's hard enough to get an offensive rebound, especially when it's not your center, right? So that's practically another turnover, and you add that onto the turnover problems he's already had, that's going to create some issues. Now, I'm not saying that the losses are Jokic's fault, which is what I'm about to get to here. He's still the best offensive player in the league, and I think still the best player in the league. But to act like he's devoid of all criticism, I think is kind of being blinded by his stats, right? To say, oh, well, he had a great night, but then you look at some of the plays he makes, and it's like, maybe he didn't have as great of a night. Now, I don't think last night that's the case. I think Jokic had the best night of any of the Nuggets. Now, obviously, Jamal, he goes out with a sprained ankle. Hopefully he's okay. It looks like it's minor from what I've seen, so that shouldn't be something that keeps him, sidelined for too long. He's already questionable for the next game, I think, which is, that's a relief, right? You want to make sure that no player is getting injured. But, so you can't really blame him. He played good in the, quarter and a half that he did play. But the rest of the team, none of them stepped up. And we were just talking about with contenders, right? The role players, they step up and they make big plays. And the Nuggets recently, their role players have not been doing that. Spencer Jones, who I really like Spencer Jones. He's had a really solid season, especially considering that he is someone who is, he's an undrafted player. He has a LinkedIn profile. He was on a 2-way contract for most of this year, right? But he's not stepping up big time. Cam Johnson isn't stepping up big time. Christian Brown, they need someone else to step up and carry some of the load. And last night, that was not the case. Last night there was, and for you guys it'll be 2 nights ago, whatever. That was not the case. There was no one else who seemed to want to be there. Now, they looked tired, right? They were not fighting around screens nearly as much as they should have. OG Anunoby was frying him from 3, and there was no adjustment made to stop him from shooting those. But it just feels like the Nuggets right now do not look like a contending team. Now, that's not to say that they're not talented enough to be. I think on paper, this is one of the best teams in the league. And coming into the year, I said they were my second favorite team in the league to win a championship this year, besides the Oklahoma City Thunder. Right now, they don't look like that to me. They're 5th in the West, I think, or 6th? No, 5th, I think, at the moment. They've fallen behind some teams that I think they're better than, and instead they're sitting in this position where they don't look great. And obviously, like I said, you can't blame it all on one specific player. Occasionally, these guys are stepping up. I think partially it's coaching. I think partially it's just these guys haven't been able to hit shots. They're all in a slump at the same time, which is just really unfortunate as a basketball team. Partially it's the fact that Nikola Jokic in clutch time has not been great. Partially it's the injuries, right? The Peyton Watson and Aaron Gordon are both out. Those are your two best athletes and probably your two best defenders too, which it's like, so you're missing a lot of what you rely on, but that is not the reason why when you're up by a ton going into the fourth, you blow that lead. That doesn't make sense to me. They can't win close games. They can't hit close game free throws. They can't hit free throws nearly at all. It's ugly. It is extremely ugly. And I like the Nuggets, and I think that they're still a very talented team, but I think it's time for us to kind of look at it as the reality that it is of if they don't get into shape by playoff time. Now, there's still some time, right? They're still going to make the playoffs, most likely. So that becomes something of, like, once they make the playoffs, what mode do they look like then? Because if they look like the team that they looked like last postseason and the beginning of this year, then yeah, I still think they're the second best team in the league, or at least in the West. But, I mean, the Spurs have the right, but they're still a contending team that I would not want to see in a single playoff series. But if they look like they look like right now, then teams like the Wolves are probably better. The Rockets might be better. The Lakers probably not. The Lakers have their own fair share of roster issues. But they're in a very, very difficult spot as a team right now. And it's going to be interesting to see what they bounce back like. And I understand they've had some really tough games. They do have the hardest schedule since the All-Star break. And they have just All-Star break, end of the season, they have the hardest schedule. But if you're a contending team, you should be able to beat other contending teams. You can't use that as an excuse. And in 2026, so far, they have not looked like a great team. And you kind of worry a little bit about that, especially since we're getting closer and closer to playoff time. But that's all I'm going to say about the Nuggets. I mean, if they could get healthy, if Peyton Watson could come back, I'm one of the biggest Peyton Watson fans probably in the world. If he could come back, maybe they can do something. Or I still think they could do something. I still think if I'm any other team in the West, I don't really want to see them in a series because I don't really trust any team to shut down Murray and Jokic right now. But if I was to pick a winner in playoff series between the Nuggets and a lot of other Western Conference teams right now, the Nuggets might not get my vote, even though they might have at the beginning of the season. Anyway, we'll move on from the Nuggets. I mentioned the Spurs very briefly there. They've been playing incredible basketball this year. Props to them. Also, I'm sure you guys saw it on the internet. Victor Wembanyama, following the win to the Detroit Pistons, which they were down. No, they were playing the Clippers. They beat the Pistons earlier this week, but they're playing the Clippers. They were down by a good bit, and I didn't watch this whole game. I just saw the moment afterwards. And they come back. They play really great basketball, as they do, and they win, and Victor Wembanyama is in tears. Like, he's crying. And it's like, I know he's going to get hate for that. I know a lot of people are going to, they're going to kind of flame him for this. I think it's cool. I think it's cool that we have a superstar who is so into the sport that he loves. And Victor Wembanyama has consistently been someone who has shown tons of effort and tons of love for the game. Like, he was trying in the All-Star game, which is awesome. Like, I don't normally watch the All-Star game, but I might have to start if Vic's going to be doing the things that he was doing, and I think that's cool. I think that was competitive. I think that was interesting. And Victor Wembanyama, it's just cool to see a superstar who really cares about the sport that they all must care about. But it's cool to see him be so into it. And I know Embiid got a lot of flack for crying after a loss in 2019. Looking back on that, I don't know why he did. Because it's like, that's a terrible moment. To lose. To win, it's tears of joy. But, like, to lose, it sucks, right? Like, we've seen, every single year they show video of the losing team, right? And it's like, damn, But I think it's cool to see Wembanyama care so much about a regular season game when for years we've seen it be like guys don't care about the regular season, they just care about the playoffs, whatever. But it's like he clearly does, and that's so cool for me to see, and it kind of makes me want to root for the Spurs going into the postseason because they're just a really fun team to watch, and I really like Victor Wembanyama. If he can stay on the court, he is one of the best players in the league, and he has some of the most potential. That doesn't make any sense, does it? Anyway, you get what I'm trying to say. He has insane potential, some of the best we've ever seen, and he could be one of the greatest players of all time if he can stay on the court, and that is really cool to see. I'm trying to think if there's any other stuff that I want to bring up. There was the KD files. I don't think I've talked about that on this podcast yet. I mean, I love Kevin Durant. He is one of my favorite players of all time. He might be my favorite player of all time. Oh my gosh, it wasn't him. At least, like the guy who's running the account, he went on to it was a audio thing on Twitter. I don't know exactly what they call it, and he was talking, and it wasn't Kevin Durant, which I was like, thank goodness, but it still doesn't look great on KD's PR. So I'm not going to talk a ton about that, but it is something that now us Kevin Durant fans are going to have to deal with. Moving on, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the prospects this upcoming draft, actually, and then we'll do our games of the week, and then we'll be done. So a little bit of a shorter episode. At least we got one out this week, you know what I mean? But so obviously the top three, pretty consensus-wise, is in no specific order: AJ Dibonsa, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Cam Boozer, and Darren Peterson. And then after that, you get into the guys like Darius Acuff, who I actually really like. I think he's really good. Kingston Fleming, obviously the Caleb Wilson, like guys like Koa Pete have kind of fallen down the board. But there's a lot of talented players after that. But at the moment, the top three is AJ, Darren, Cam. I think so. For much of the college basketball, and I don't watch a ton of college basketball, right? So I'm sort of a casual about this. I watch much more NBA, so that's more my area of expertise. But for the majority of the college season, I have looked at Darren Peterson as the number one prospect in this draft. He is an effortless scorer. He can score at all three levels. He can attack the rim. He can shoot the three ball. He can shoot the mid. Like, he's an incredible scorer. He has playmaking and defensive attributes. Those obviously are not his biggest strengths, but it's not like he's completely useless in those areas. And he's had a good season with Kansas when he's played. I feel like now I have to look at him a little bit and nitpick some of the off-the-court things a little bit in terms of he hasn't been able to stay on the court injury-wise, but also there have been some things about personality and about not seeming to buy into the team or the game and it's kind of weird. And that's not what I would want to see out of my number one overall pick if I was a team. So if I was to make my top three right now, I think I'd go AJ first because he's just such an incredible prospect. He's such a fluid wing who can score, and he's a two-way wing, and obviously he needs work on a lot of areas of his game, but I do think his ceiling is very high. He could be one of the better one of the better wings, I think, in the league. Cam Boozer would be my number two, who's just got such a unique skill set in terms of, obviously, he's a good athlete, he's strong, he can work in the post, but then also he's got playmaking and shooting abilities that make him a much more well-rounded offensive player, and he can play defense and rebound pretty solidly. So it's like he's actually got a lot of traits that I think an NBA team would be looking for, and he can kind of plug and play into any system. At least that's what a team drafting him would hope. So I think that could be really interesting with him as the 2 pick. And then Peterson at 3, just because those injuries, that off the court stuff, it sort of impacts his draft stock a little bit to me. And if there wasn't two other great prospects in the same draft, I probably would still take Peterson number one. Like if it was Victor Wembanyama in that draft, then I'm still taking Wembanyama, even if he had those, off the court things. I would still take him high, despite, just because like Scoot Henderson and Brandon Miller, who were the 2 and 3 pick in that draft, and Brandon Miller was 2, whatever. Those guys were not as great of prospects as Wembanyama. But even without off the court stuff, Boozer and DiBonsa are very close to Peterson in terms of their level as a prospect. They're both, they're all incredibly talented, and I wouldn't be mad at any of them getting taken number one. I think that Peterson, obviously, he's been looked at as the most talented, but the other two are still extremely talented and still very, very easily number one overall pick quality. So I do think that because of that, Peterson's stock has fallen a little bit for me. Now, obviously, it hasn't fallen past third overall pick, and if a team still takes a flyer on him with the first or second pick, I wouldn't be mad. But if I was drafting, I would take those other guys, two guys, ignoring team fit and all that stuff. I would take those other two guys before him. I just think that they're almost as good as of prospects, ignoring that off the court stuff and those injuries, and then you account for that stuff, and it's like, I think that kind of tips me over the edge on those guys. So that's just what I wanted to say about Peterson. I'll talk a little bit more about March Madness. Like I said, I don't watch a ton of college basketball. I don't know a ton about college basketball or the history of it, so that's not something that I know. We'll do some stuff with March Madness, though. I've got some ideas for that that I think could be really cool. And, we'll talk about that. Hopefully the episodes will be out a little more. I know I do have some stuff in the future, but hopefully the episodes will be out a little more frequently now. Anyway, in the meantime, we're going to do our games of the week. So we are currently sitting at our record for the year is 57-20. We started off a little bit better and then kind of went into a bit of a slide, so hopefully we can get back to that level that we were at beforehand. Sunday's game, because we start with Sunday. I'm going to say it's Celtics Cavaliers. Obviously, Tatum coming back for the Celtics. He's expected to play in this game, I believe. Yeah, I think he's expected to be back for I wasn't sure if they were going to sit him but no, he's going to play. The Cavs have a couple injuries, but Harden and Mitchell are both expected to play, and Mobley. I'm going to take the Celtics. I think the Celtics are going to look extremely scary with the return of Tatum. They already won their first game, and now I think that the Cavs have looked much, much better, so props to them. Obviously, the Harden trade has worked extremely well. Jared Allen has been able to feast off of that, but Allen's out for this game, which does give me wow, it's getting late. Does make me think that the Celtics are going to win this game. On Monday, I'm going with Nuggets Thunder as the game of the week or game of the day that day. I'm taking the Thunder. The Nuggets have not shown me recently that they should be picked over the Thunder, and the Thunder are still, in my opinion, the best team in the league. They're about to be at 50 wins very soon. They're playing right now, actually, as I'm recording this, so they might already be at 50 wins by the time you guys hear this tomorrow. If so, I'm sorry for the outdated information. But I'm taking the Thunder there. On Tuesday, the game of the day that day is going to be, I don't love choosing choosing teams for multiple games of the week, but I'm going to. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to say Wolves-Lakers because that's a playoff rematch, which always adds a couple extra points. Wolves-Lakers, I'm going to take the Wolves. I just don't trust the Lakers. Their roster construction still is faulty to me. Their defense leaves a lot to be desired. They don't have the athletes that they need. And, we saw Rudy Gobert give them 20-20 in the playoffs. So who knows what he'll do this time. Maybe he'll go for 30-20. I don't even know. I would get his name tatted on my arm if he does that. On Wednesday, like I said, I don't love to choose repeat games. or like repeat teams, but I have to because the rest of the games are not great. I'm going Rockets at Nuggets. It's very difficult for me to choose against the to pick against the Nuggets multiple times in a week, so I'm going to take the Nuggets here. I know that we've talked about their struggles recently, but then again, the Rockets have their fair share of issues as well. If the Nuggets are decently healthy, I think the Nuggets having their athletes, Watson's not going to be back yet, but having Aaron Gordon would be huge for that game because they're going to need that against a team like the Rockets. But I do think that I just don't trust the Rockets' offensive creation, and if the Nuggets can just get what they need to get going on offense, I think they could win this game. But this is sort of a questionable call for me. On Thursday, I'm gonna go with Sixers Pistons on Thursday as my game. I'm gonna take the Pistons there. The Sixers have had a decent season, but the Pistons have just been playing out of their minds. They've been incredible all year, so we're gonna go with them. On Friday, I would say I'm making these on the fly. Normally I write them down beforehand, but I kind of forgot, so I'm kind of going. Could you guys tell? I don't know. And I'm going to go with Wolves Warriors there. That's the only one that's decent. I'm going to take the Wolves there. The Warriors, I just don't really believe in, especially since they've had a lot of injury issues recently. And then on Saturday, last game, I'm going to say, you know what? I'll go Magic Heat. That's a little Florida matchup. That's kind of fun. It's in Miami. I'm going to take the Heat. Obviously, the Magic missing Franz sucks. Hopefully he'll come back. It said he was out indefinitely, so hopefully he'll come back at some point. I believed in the Magic a lot coming into this year. They have severely disappointed me. But I am going to take Magic Heat, or I'm going to take the Heat against the Magic there. So that is all the games. Drop your predictions in the comments below. I hope you guys did enjoy me coming back, finally getting an episode out. Like I said, hit me up on Instagram, Just Talk Hoops, and drop something in the comments. If you're on YouTube, talk to me. I always love to talk about basketball or whatever else. And hopefully you guys have a great week. I will try and get an episode out next week for you guys. I will try my very best and actually, stick to some semblance of a schedule. So I appreciate you guys tuning in, and I will see you next week.